That brings me to the next question. What policies or initiative can government put in place or implement to address environmental degradation and protection, or to promote sustainable living?
Yeah, so now we've already discussed about the environmental tax.
Yes.
Then another thing I will also suggest is that especially for the town planners who approves building plans. So it's time to look at what the number of trees that can be planted in a site when you are preparing your plans for approval. There should also be condition for you to plant at least 1 or 2 trees, because what we have, there is strong connection, the relationship between plants and humans. So while we give out carbon to them, and then we take oxygen from them. So if we do not have them enough to absorb this carbon, it becomes a problem. So in order to avoid this issue, so there is need for us to ensure that we integrate tree planting into our construction, into our general plan approval. That will also help. And another issue is that there is disconnect. There is no handshake between research findings in academia and government agencies. As far as I'm concerned, every human concern is represented in tertiary institution. Every ministry and agency is represented in for instance, if you have Ministry of Environment, you have faculty or Department of Environmental Sciences. So if you have issue with the judiciary, or the justice system, you have the legal, you have the law. If you have issue with economic development, there is also banking and finance and Department of Economy. So what I expect is, because majority of our research findings, you find them dying in shelves, even in the waste base. So now what we need to be looking at is a paradigm shift where the government ministries and agencies can send their issues, their concern, their problem to schools, and research endeavor, research strides will be channeled, tailored along that side.
Based on the feedback from the government. What do you do to ameliorate this particular issue?
Yes, so and when that is done, the research findings, because students will be told to channel their research topics, investigation to that concern. And when they have the research findings, the findings will now be channeled back into the ministry for implementation.
The information you gave to us, this is what we did with it, and this is the outcome. Now implement.
So when that is done, we will be out of these issues, because there is that disconnect. There's no handshake between research findings in institutions of learning and the government ministries.
Let us do more on that. What do you think is the cause of lack of handshake between the research institutes and that of the government?
So I think there's no there's no will for that, and then it
no
has
political
will, and it has never come up in the agenda. And then nobody gives consent, nobody wants to do so. If they just see academic institution as a different entity, and then the government agency as a different entity. So we need to recalibrate our mind to look at it very well. So maybe also, I think the institutions need to also let the government know. Sometimes they may not know all of these things, that look, we can't be living in isolation. Our research findings are dying out there without implementation. So we need to find a rhythm. We need to find a connect. So I think there's no political will to go about that, and then there is no form of I would say priority. There's no priority about it. So it's not on the agenda, a government agenda, or governance is not part of governance. If it is included as part of governance, it will work.
Okay. Dr. Bassi, you are an environmentalist. You are equally a research consultant, and you are also in the academia. And I know that sometimes there are grants for academia to research on issues, and when such grant is gotten, and the research made, what happened to the results of those research?
So it's the same thing. The grants are usually not enough because there's no deliberate attempt for government to leverage research. You know, developed climes like the United States, they make so much money from research. You've heard of John Hopkins University.
Yeah, John Hopkins.
So majority of it, so they have a very strong database. Majority of the findings, majority of the data, you know, originate from there. So we don't pay attention. So because it's already the monocultural economy mentality has already overtaken us. So we would not think that we can make money from research. We can actually make money from research. So when you spend money on research, you can make a very good return from research. So what happens is, those findings, though the grants is usually not enough, but those completed studies have never been implemented. So, so it's about continuity. Successive governments might not want to toe the line. Maybe if the previous government initiated a particular project, how about the successive governments who have come in? So it might not be part of their agenda. So that continuity that is lacking in governance is also affecting research implementation.
Okay, I am not trying to digress in this issue. As well as an academia, those researches, as soon as the results are being compiled and you go and dump it in the shelves, what is actually the need to have started carrying, to start the project in the first place? Is there no goal for that research? And if after the research and it is dumped, don't you think that the one who did the research could be held accountable for not actually saying anything apart from just saying, I have completed the research?
Okay, so the implementation does not lie with the researcher.
Okay.
So the duty of the researcher, because research is a problem-solving endeavor. So what is the essence of research is to identify a problem and then provide solution to that for solving that problem, a solution that is sustainable. Now a researcher has completed his work and has published the findings. So there are, because we have stakeholders in research, the researcher himself is a stakeholder. The people who give credence to it is the stakeholder. The study area where they study the research is based, and then the government through its agencies have the duty to implement. So it is not the duty of a researcher to implement his findings. So what we do normally is that when you have this research, they are not completely lost because you make reference to them. For instance, research cannot be does not have, sometimes research is unending. For instance, if you want to find out why someone dropped out of school, you get to know that, okay, it was lack of finance, and then the parents were not well to do. So another researcher will take up, why were the parents not well to do? So the parents were not paid good money, were not were not well paid where they were working in their own time. Another researcher will say, why were they not well paid? So you see, you keep going and going. So now it will be there in the academic community, in their in repository, that okay, these findings are there. But the major thing is the implementation. The implementation lies with the government agencies.